Hello and welcome to the MoBros Show, where I, Tip Mosley, pastor at Fellowship Baptist Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, will sit and discuss topics of life, ministry, and theology with my brother, J.P. Mosley, who is a professor and minister at Heidelberg Theological Seminary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. On today's episode, JP and I will continue a discussion talking about life and work as related to the writings of Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes, as we look at the phrase, under the sun. Ecclesiastes. Almost every chapter we find the words under the sun. It's not found in chapter 7. I don't think it's found in chapter 11. And I don't think it's found in chapter 12. But even in other chapters, Solomon uses it like I think up to maybe 6 times in one chapter. I'd have to go back and look again. I had those notes written down. I think 3 times in the first chapter, 5 times in the second chapter. Anyway, he uses that phrase a lot, under the sun. What does that mean? Just looking at those 3 words. What does under the sun mean?
Well, I think if you're going for the overall book, it means life.
Life.
Yeah, I mean, everything on earth is essentially under the sun, and some people, it's wisdom literature, and so clearly he understands that there's things in caves that will never have the sun of light reach it. And
what was that first word?
Clearly.
No. You said caves. What did you say before caves?
He understands that there's things in deep, dark caves that will never.
Oh! I thought you said things. I wasn't sure. I'm sorry. I thought you were using another word for like a crevice or something or a cave.
No.
I wasn't sure. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
It's okay. No, but the point is what the phrase life. It's life under the sun. That's it. And so it's talking about life in this created world, in this created order. Because there is a place where there is no sun, and that's heaven. And so it's talking about our existence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's probably one of the key phrases in Ecclesiastes, and a key phrase for that part of wisdom, in a very real. I was teaching a Bible study Sunday night, and I made the point that in the Hebrew Bible, I don't know if I've made this point on this particular show before, but in the Hebrew Bible, one reads the book of Proverbs and it closes with Proverbs 31, which is a good wife. What to look for in a good wife, my son. And so very much a mother talking to her son, encouraging him to look for these particular attributes. What follows Proverbs 31 in the Hebrew canon, the Christian Hebrew canon, which has always been Christian, is the book of Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you finish reading about what to look for in a good wife, you read a story about a good wife. And then what follows that is the Song of Solomon. So you've got, this picture of a good wife, what makes up a good wife, and then you get to the Song of Solomon, and it really, really cool, because now you've got a song celebrating love, celebrating marriage, celebrating everything that is related to what Boaz and Ruth are now now a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got the Song of Songs. You know what follows the Song of Songs?
What follows the Song of Songs?
Yeah. Life under the sun. Ecclesiastes, Kohelet.
I thought Ecclesiastes came before Song of Songs.
Not in the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't.
Not in the Hebrew Bible. Okay.
That's the point I'm making, is in the Hebrew
I see.
Bible, it takes you through a progression. In wisdom literature, takes you through a progression. And so you have what to look for in a wife. Here's a story about a wife. Here's a song celebrating marriage, celebrating dating, courtship, getting married. And then here is wisdom about how to live this life, because what's more important, the wedding or the marriage? And then following Ecclesiastes, let me get there. You have, let me ask you, can you guess what follows? If you think about it, what would be a good book to follow a book about life?
What would be a good book to follow a book about life?
Yeah. So you've got the beginning of marriage, you've got the life that one ought to live while married, and then you have this book, which actually has one of the exact middle of this book has got a really good song based on it, based on the redemption and grace of God. How great thou art.
Oh yeah. I don't know. My mind goes to, well, if you're going to have a book about life, then, well, I don't know why it's like my mind always automatically goes to something dark. It's like have a book about death.
It's Lamentations.
Yeah. No. Lamentations, which that
is it. It's Lamentations.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was going to say either Lamentations or maybe it would go to Job.
Job is before Proverbs.
Okay.
Job follows Psalms. And so you get Psalms is the first book. See, the Hebrew canon is divided up into three different groupings. You've got the Torah, which is the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And then you have the prophets, which goes from Joshua to Malachi. So you got Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then the 12 prophets. And then you have Psalms, Job, Proverbs, Ruth, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Lamentations, and then here comes Esther, Daniel, Ezra, Nehemiah, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. That's the order of the Old Testament canon.
Okay.
And so in this little bitty section on wisdom literature, that's where Ruth is found. That's where Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, Ruth. And so literally you learn childhood in Proverbs. It leads you to marriage, story about marriage, song about marriage, account on wisdom and just living life, and then wisdom and how to grieve over death.
Right.
And
loss.
That's where of loss. That's right. And so Lamentations, and then you get into more history, which is kind of closing out of the Hebrew canon. So you get Esther, you get Daniel, you get Ezra, Nehemiah, and you get 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which closes out the Hebrew canon.
Huh.
A little bit of Hebrew. It's just cool.
Yeah, that is cool. I think I prefer to have that than because it makes more sense to have it laid out that way.
Yeah, it's definitely what I would call kind of a catechism approach, a church education approach to life, versus when you get into more like the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of it. And I've got that right here. And you open up, and all of a sudden,
that order is different.
The order is different. So you instead of after Proverbs finding Ruth, we find Ecclesiastes. And part of the reason, and then there's Job. And part of the reason.
So Job comes after Ecclesiastes in the Septuagint.
And the Septuagint's got other additional books as well, like the Apocrypha I found. Septuagint. And so it's got a completely different order too, but it's following more genre and then chronology.
Yeah. Types of books.
And then historical ordering.
Yeah. Does the Septuagint have Maccabees in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got first and second Maccabees. It's got other books.
Well, you said something. Going back to Under the Sun, you said something that sparked something in my mind. That there is a place where there is no sun. And you said heaven. I think of another place too. Of course, that would be hell.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's more of a beautiful picture of life, considering that in heaven there is no sun. And what we read in Revelation when John sees the new heaven, the new earth, is that there's no need for a sun. There's no need for a moon. Reading in Revelation 21 and continuing into Revelation 22, what we find is that the glory of God is it's the brightest thing. I mean, it's seeing God on his throne. There is no need for a sun because of the glory of God. And I think it's definitely a beautiful picture of we live our lives under the sun, and it like you said last time, it's the toil, it's the work, it's the like if you introduce yourself to someone, let's say we're being cordial, we're being polite, and you go into a place where there's a lot of people that you don't know. So there's strangers there, there's people you don't know, and you have to go up to somebody and meet them. What is it that normally you talk about at the first time meeting somebody? Like you introduce yourself. What do you normally talk about?
What do you do for a living?
Yeah. What's your name? What do you do for a living? Like, so what is your name? Like, who are you? And then what is your work?
I end up forgetting the name. You want to know what? You don't want to know what one of my sons has started. He's been doing this for a little over a year now. Random stranger on the playground. Hey, what's your name? Do you go to church? Are you a Christian? He's trying to figure out if this is somebody he wants to play with or not.
Oh, okay.
That's why I laughed when you first asked that question, because I immediately thought of one of my sons. And it's like, that's good, son. That's good. Here, let me give you some pointers. But no, typically it's, your name is. And a lot of times, because I travel and preach in different churches as a minister and then as a representative of a seminary, a lot of times people, and this is majority of the time, people know my name already. And so I'll stand in a room and there's a conversation, of course, and I'm kind of at the head of the conversation. And somebody just shows up and starts having this, and just gets in, and they say Dr. Mosley or Pastor Mosley or Reverend Mosley or whatever, and then I'll say, I'm sorry, what is your name? And it's happened one time when I was pastoring in Colorado Springs, where somebody was visiting from Anaheim, California, and she was in Colorado Springs for work and had done some research to figure out where she wanted to worship on Sunday, and she landed on where I pastored. And one of my practices there was just to introduce myself as JP Mosley. Because I just wanted to, we needed to just kind of have that initial, and then people would find out, oh, this is not just, a normal church member. This is the pastor of the church.
Yeah.
And so it would be quickly after that, they would say Pastor Mosley. But this lady goes, so I'm standing there with one of the elders who actually was from Southern California. And so here we are. So I'm JP Mosley. She goes, oh, well, you're Pastor Mosley. Now that weirded me out. I'm always taken off guard by that kind of stuff. I then don't know in other words, in normal conversations, you go, and you are? But that doesn't happen at that moment. I'm going, she thinks she knows me. Just because you found my name somewhere and or you see my picture somewhere. But when I'm at a coffee shop or, we're visiting somewhere, generally, and I did it this past Sunday. I met somebody for the first time, didn't know who they were. They were in Rapid City visiting. They were there for a conference. Again, this is after the service, so they've already kind of seen and heard me preach and various things like that. And I said, "No, I'm sorry." You said you're from Louisville. What is your name? And what do you do? And so that normally that's how conversation starts. Abnormally, they think they know you because they've looked you up.
Uh-huh. So when somebody comes up to you and they already know who you are, say, "Oh, you're Reverend or you're Pastor, or your brother J.P. Mosley," and then you say, "And you are?" Is that actually how you say it?
No. I just
okay, good.
I just go, yes, I am.
Yeah.
And then I try to
don't be awkward with people, JP. Don't be awkward.
Then I try to figure out a way to walk away real fast.
No, okay. Because I'm gonna, like, if you actually say, "And you are," like, that's, man, dang.
Yeah. No.
That's a bit rude.
Well,
I normally come out with this. Well, you got me at a disadvantage here. I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Well, you know my name. I don't know your name." You turn it into something cheeky.
I'll be honest with you. I have to work on it because I think it's rude to assume you know me. We just met.
Yeah.
It was at my licensure exam, which was over a decade ago. I think it was around a decade ago. I don't remember.
We are now in 2021. Does that help?
Yeah. It's soon to be a decade ago.
Okay.
It was a 6.5-hour exam.
Oof.
It's the equivalent of the bar exam or the medical boards. Anyway,
which it should be.
Yeah. And so I'm being examined. And it gets to one of the last portions, and it's practicum. So practical questions. And
yeah.
One of the questions was, you're in your study, and somebody comes in and knocks on your door. Somebody, you've never met them, and they ask you if you would officiate their wedding. How would you respond? And my answer was,
"I'm going to be out of town that week." "Oh, we didn't tell you the date. Sorry, I'm going to be out of town that week."
My answer was, "I don't know you. We just met." Well, and of course the whole room burst out laughing, but I'm going, what's wrong with that answer? I just met these people.
Right.
I don't know you. And that's the awkwardness of, how did they know my office? Did they just walk into a random church and thought there's got to be a minister in there that'll officiate a wedding real quick?
Right. Yeah. Give me a little context for this question here.
Right. And that's the case with this person from Anaheim coming up. Is I didn't find out she was from Anaheim until after she did the whole, "Oh, you're Pastor Mosley."
Yeah.
And I said, oh, and I kind of almost did what you were just describing. "I'm sorry. You've who are you? I mean, I don't know who you are. Have we met?"
Yeah. Have we met? Yeah.
And she's like,
sorry,
"Oh,
have
no,
we
no,
met?"
no. And then she explained she attended Kim Riddlebarger's church, he was one of the co-hosts for the White Horse Inn and planted a church in Anaheim. I mean, it's a big name. He writes books and stuff like that. I'm going, okay, thank you. That's the way to name drop.
Right.
And,
yeah.
But and I said, "Well, I'm glad you're here. Let me introduce you to this elder right here. He's also from Southern California. I have to go take care of a few things."
There you go. Putting it on somebody else. Yep.
It's not. It's called delegating.
Mm-hmm. Laughing because I've been there.
But the thing is that was a part of actually our strategy as a church was until we had greeters, myself and this other elder that I have in mind would stand out there and greet people that way. but there would come a moment where I would have to step away.
Yeah.
Because I'd have to get mic'd up. I'd have to go make sure everything was ready.
Yep.
And then even he would have to leave so that we can meet for prayer before the service. But generally, it was just, you kind of feel hurried. It's one of the reasons why we had a fellowship meal every Sunday at that church, was so that we could continue those follow-up questions with people. And
oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Have a time to fellowship together.
Comes from the book of Acts.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't make it up.
Well, no, I know. I wasn't giving you credit for that. I was just saying.
Yeah. Well, and it was there before I got there.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talk about my practicum was a bit different. Mine was in counseling. And so I had things thrown at me too, some unusual things thrown at me. How would you handle this situation? Or they'd give me a case study and I'd have to give a diagnosis or something. So when it comes to being a pastor, my practicum is, when it comes up and I got to deal with it. Like getting asked from a stranger, will you do my wedding? And I didn't know how to approach it. I checked my schedule just to make sure. And actually, you know what? Hey, I will be out of town that week. It was already set up that way. It wasn't me trying to get out of it. But I told her, because I said, do you have a home church? No, we don't have a home church. I said, well, it'd be good to have a home church. Come and visit us. You know where we are. She just lives down the street. And I said, what else do you have to get set up? Because normally a pastor will want to do premarital counseling. And she said, well, honestly, we've got everything set up except for a pastor. I forgot to get a pastor. Mm-hmm. So that clued me into where their priorities are with a lot of that. And I said, well, normally when you're calling, a pastor will reserve the opportunity for a congregant, a member of the church, and sometimes for someone who is going to be using the church as the venue for doing the wedding ceremony, something like that. And so that I kind of explained to her, and I hope I was helpful, letting her know, hey, this is what most pastors are going to expect for you to do if you want them to be your officiant. Make sure you do the premarital counseling. It's better if it's someone that you know. Otherwise, they're in it for the money, and that's just sad.
Yeah, well, I actually have kind of a flow chart that, and it's based on that question at my licensure exam. So, after that initial kind of reaction, I also then say, well, I need to talk to my elders about this.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and kind of tell you what that means. They're going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wouldn't tell this to the individuals,
right?
The couple, but they're going to say no because I don't know them, and in fact, I'm probably going to encourage them to say no. And then when I follow back with them, I'm going to explain. In our church, a wedding ceremony is a right of a member in the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's a right that members in our congregation have.
Right.
And you're not a member.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do what everybody else does. You can go to the justice of the peace. That is perfectly fine. You don't need to have a pastor look over this. You can have the captain of a boat do it. You can go to the justice of the peace and have this done. In some states, you can get any person to do it. You don't.
Yeah.
Colorado's that way. But my point is this:
someone who's ordained with the Church of the Lizards.
Oh dear.
The lizard people.
The lizard people.
Lizard people church.
It's been a while. Anyway, I don't know how we've gotten to this from Life Under the Sun, but that kind of,
I don't know either. I don't know.
But that kind of shows you that if we are talking about Life on the Sun, it's situational, but that doesn't mean we believe in situational ethics.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we're getting at here, and that's not what Ecclesiastes is getting at. Ecclesiastes is getting at, what is life under the sun supposed to be? It's supposed to be honoring to God and give Him glory.
Right. And so what the angle that I was kind of going at, and I think you knew what angle I was going at too, was that when we introduce ourselves to people or introduce ourselves to a stranger, it's always, Hey, what's your name? Hey, what do you do?
Yep.
Why? Why is it that way? I mean, does your name define who you are?
It used to.
It used to. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can go into Shakespeare,
Yeah.
Shakespeare, where it was a name against a name. You look at Romeo and Juliet. It was this family name against this family name. Yeah. And then he uses what about a rose? A rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. So what's in a name? What's in a name? What is it? What is, of course, we know that in Jesus' name, it means a lot. There's no other name by which man can be saved. And so that's a much grander, more sacred, and more divine name. And so we're given names at birth, and some people after birth, some people before birth, but we're given names. It used to define a lot about who you are. And work also. Do we allow what we do to define who we are? Like if you were to go up to someone and let's just say you're just a Joe Schmo, and you're just a regular person, they don't know who you are, because apparently you are very popular and a lot of people know who you are. But anyway, say that not a lot of people know who you are, and you're going up to somebody, you meet somebody and you say, "Oh, what's your name?" "Oh, my name is Victor." "Oh, what do you do, Victor?" "I'm a medical doctor." "Okay." And then you go up to meet this other guy. His name is Victor and he's a plumber. Does that change your view of one Victor compared to the other Victor? I know that one of them gets paid more than the other. Do you know how much plumbers get paid?
They could get paid a lot of money.
Plumbers get paid a lot of money. I'm saying the plumber gets paid more than the doctor.
And he probably doesn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan.
Right.
One of them's probably not poor.
Right. Yeah, one of them probably doesn't have debt because they went and learned a skill from a trade. Learned a trade, while the other one went to school and is going to die in debt, drown in it. Yeah. No, I mean, I've never wanted to allow when I meet somebody, and I always go through that. "Oh, hey, what do you do?" I did that with a couple at church last Sunday. "Oh, hey, what do you? I don't know what you guys. They've been visiting for a while. Hey, I don't know what you guys do," and it didn't really mean much. I mean, what they do is great, and that's good and all, but it didn't change any perspective that you would have on somebody.
Three things. First of all, in the Bible, names still mean something.
Yes.
When we are created in the image of God, and when we are born again, we're given the name of Christ.
Oh yeah, Christian, Christ-like, to be Christ-like. We bear the name of Christ.
We have his name stamped upon us now.
Yeah.
Not only do we have the signature of God's design upon us, we're created in his image and likeness, but then we have the name of Christ on us. Secondly, the Reformation brought about the doctrine of vocation, that the plumber and the physician have equally high callings. And at the end of the day, it's to give God glory in all that they think, say, and do. And so, that's one of the things that I really appreciated to this day. This is going to go way back here, from the chapels that we had at Radnor, and
how he would end
it.
Yeah.
And that spoke to me to this day. So
glorify God in all that you think, all that you say, and all that you do.
That's right. And that's Ecclesiastes. That's life under the sun, and that's our vocation. Because before the Reformation, the only people that were able to glorify God were the priests, the bishops, the monks, the nuns, those that were in, clergy. After the Reformation, the plumber is able to do the same thing, getting rid of your crap as any other person. That's giving God glory. It's working. It's doing, it's great. We need plumbers. We need electricians. We need mechanics. They all are able to give God glory.
If I had somebody on my left that could get rid of my crap, man, that'd be great.
Yeah. Anyway, and then the third thing is James actually speaks to what you're saying in his book when he describes two people walking into church. And I'm gonna use kind of a paraphrase, my own translation to paraphrase what James says.
Okay.
He says, you've got on the one hand the sharp dressed man, and he comes in and he's wearing a Rolex. A Rolex, not a Rolex. What's a Rolex? A Rolex.
That's a mark. It's a knockoff.
Yeah. It's like the Oakleys. Anyway,
Yeah,
we
continue.
get a Washington D.C. Anyway,
Sharp-dressed man in a Rolex.
Sharp-dressed man in a Rolex. And then the next guy that comes in, well, he looks like a bum. He looks like he's even tried to cut his own hair.
Mm.
And he doesn't smell good. The other guy smells fresh. He's got a perfume. He's got a cologne for every different day of the week. This other guy, James says, you want to sit the other guy in the seat of honor. Sit the poorly dressed man in the seat of honor. Don't, in other words, just because a guy looks well off and looks well to do, don't think he's going to bring in a lot of money for the church.
Mm.
And he may bring in a lot of money, but he's also probably going to bring in a lot of problems too. Now, at the same time, James is not sitting back and saying wealth is the problem, because Abraham was the wealthiest man in the Bible. David was pretty wealthy. So wealth isn't the problem. The problem is why are we putting this person in this seat of honor? We have the problem with wealth. And that's in essence what you're getting at there. You think the doctor, the physician versus the plumber, you're looking and you're making a judgment call based on their work instead of basing their value on their fact that they're made in the image of God.
Right.
The value is not in the work. The value is who they created in and who they're giving glory to. I will say there are some professions that we ought not give value to. For example, the oldest profession known to man.
Ooh, yeah.
We ought not give any value to that.
Work in the streets.
It's prostitution.
Yeah.
Harlotry. Whoredom.
Yeah. Well, here's where I'm going though. You said in heaven there is no sun, and like I said, it sparked something in my brain that while we are on this earth and we are living, we are working, we are toiling out of sin. I mean, I think that when Adam and Eve were in paradise before they ate of the tree that they weren't supposed to eat from, does it say anything in there that they worked for anything before?
Yeah, it says they were to tend and to keep the garden. That's work.
Yeah. But it wasn't painful work. It wasn't labor.
Oh, no, labor's added.
Yeah.
The idea of pain in labor is added. So labor is there.
Yeah. So
work is there.
Adam,
it's the pain. It's
toil.
the pain in labor.
Yeah. And there will be thorns. There will be thorns. There will be pain in the labor. And then for the woman, there will be pain in labor, child labor.
But in both places, the ground won't provide what you want it to provide, and then with the woman, sometimes the womb won't provide what you want it to provide either. But
here's like before the disobedience, it seemed like God has always given provision to his children. Mm-hmm. It seemed like that was a little different. It seemed like the work wasn't painful. It wasn't painful until the fall, and so after that, work is toil. Toil is work. Now we have to work for what, we have to bring in the bread. We have to bring home the bacon, right? We have to work for what we need, and God provides what we need, but we work for it, and we pray for those provisions. And so while we're under the sun, we work. Once this body is done, once God calls us home and we are no longer under the sun, the work is over. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that's
possible. There's some people that say that there's going to still be kind of activity in heaven.
Now the toil though, like the
pain and the pain and the crying and the tears, that's all gone.
Yeah,
it's all gone.
And you look at Revelation, and I think it's in Revelation 22, when there's that river of life that's flowing from the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's trees that are growing up around that river. And I think John is seeing a paradise like described in the Garden of Eden.
Oh yeah, it's supposed to be symbolic of, the garden is symbolic of heaven.
Yeah.
So that's what you're saying.
What's so beautiful though is that there's no need for a son, I read that, I see that, I hear that, and also hear there's no need for work. There's no more need for that toiling. There's no more need for that breaking your back.
Yeah, there won't be any more pain in the work. I don't know if it says there's no more need for work. But because if I mean the reason I hesitate is because it does say there's not going to be any more sin, any more death, any more tears. It focuses on the negative. In the garden, the positives were all there.
Yeah. Well, I just see. So he describes those trees, right? And it's possible, I don't know, are they literal trees? Are they metaphorical trees? But he describes these trees, and on these trees are all the different fruits that you could think of. And you could take and you could eat of the fruits that are there and that are provided. So when I see that and I read that, I think about that, and I think about the paradise that he is preparing for us, that there's no longer the feeling of needing anything. It's all provided. You can take of it what you need, whatever you can take of it, and it never ends. It's always flowing. That river of life. There's that eternal life that is flowing, and you can always partake of it. There's no more thirst. There's no more hunger.
Yeah,
everything.
The reason I hesitate is because no eye has seen, no ear has heard. So
True.
whatever reports that we have,
right,
we have to be very careful trying to say this is what it's going to be like.
Oh yeah, no. I'm not saying I know that it's what it's going to be like. I'm just saying, this is what it looks like to me. This is
Because here's the thing. We can go to the garden and say, this is a type of paradise. This is a type of heaven. It's called paradise, but it's not heaven. It was maybe heaven touching earth.
Are you talking about the Garden of Eden?
Yeah.
But
see, that's what the church is supposed to be too. The church is supposed to be heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
The tabernacle, the temple, is supposed to be heaven on earth. And so, but yet, every time we step into church, there's still work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Adam and Eve had a direction they were going. They had a goal in life. They weren't perfect. They weren't complete. There was a trial. There was a test. There was a sacrament of those trees, of the knowledge of good and evil, and then the tree of life. Those were sacraments.
Yeah.
And so being barred from that and then having to live in a fallen world, that's in essence what Ecclesiastes is getting at. It's the reason why Ecclesiastes has that phrase about there's a hole in man's heart. There's eternity in man's heart. And what fills that space is that longing for God. And what sinful men tend to do with it is they fill that hole with substances, with work, with idolatry.
Yeah.
It's what made one theologian at the Reformation say, man's heart is an idol factory.
Oh.
You can go on to say we mass produce it daily, mass produce idols daily. And I think he was right. In other words, think of children. How often do you have to teach them to steal, kick, bite, punch, lie, cheat? No, you don't.
You don't.
It comes natural. That eye in sin, that selfish eye in sin, is seen even with the youngest of children.
Yeah.
But that's, again, life under the sun. It's describing this life. It's describing what we're faced with, and what the goal is. The goal is in the midst of all of this, not to give up, not to throw in the towel, not to say, well, it's pointless, it's useless. No, the goal is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever in the midst of it all.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why James would say, James and Peter and others would sit back and say, consider it joy.
Yeah.
Consider it joy.
And Paul writes about exalting God in the midst of suffering.
Persecution, suffering. Yeah.
Hardship.
It's interesting that in the New Testament, and this shows you where false gospels come in. In the New Testament, the one promise the one promise that's given that tends to be overlooked is that the church will suffer, that individuals will suffer. And that's to me, that's rather, Jesus says it in Matthew 5, 10, 11, and 12. Blessed are you when you are persecuted.
When?
Blessed are you when you are reviled.
When?
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, not if.
Right. And so you look at the false gospels, and what are they saying? They want you to have your best life now. Why? Because when you go to hell, it won't be that great.
Ha! Oh, hey-oh.
Yeah.
Hitting it hard.
Well, that was
no punches pulled there.
That was kind of a little kitty. Yeah.
You could hit harder?
Maybe.
Well, no, I mean, I get what you're saying. I don't know. I think we get into, especially in America, we get into a state of complacency too. There was a gentleman that we were talking. It was, I think, getting close to Christmas last year, and people talking about how awful 2020 was, and he said it's nothing compared to what persecution will look like.
Right.
Yeah, he said will look like.
Yeah.
Because you can look at other countries where there's definitely persecution of the church happening all the time, to the point of death, of the Bible is illegal. You have it, you're put to death. You're put in jail, you're put to death. Yeah, we don't see that in America.
Well,
I mean, persecution exists in America, and it's I think it's slowly boiling, coming to a boil with the things that we're seeing, with the things that deceit that the devil likes to place within mankind, within the world. Of, did God really say that?
Yeah,
that was the line that he gave in Genesis. Did God really say that you would die if you ate from this tree? Did God really say that a man and a man cannot be married? Did God really say that a man should not dress as a woman or present himself as a woman? Did God really say that? And now the world's believing that he didn't.
Or that it doesn't mean what the church has said it's meant for thousands of years. The simple reading of Scripture is no longer the correct reading.
Oh.
God didn't mean it that way. You misunderstood. You're not really going to die.
Right. Right. And so that it's boiling up. And there's people out there that are fighting it.
Oh yeah. Well, there's ministers here in Canada. There's one minister, at least I know of, who's been arrested for certain things. Now, there's some ministers that are just jerks and don't know how to preach in season and out of season.
Huh.
But then there's the ministers who are faithful to the Scriptures and then are persecuted. So I'll share a story real quick. There was the time of the Reformation. There was a Presbyterian minister, of course, kind of a new thing. His name was John Knox. We're all familiar with that name. There's a lot of people end up having a last name of Knox, and then later on, there's names, cities named after different Knoxes, like Knoxville.
Uh-huh.
And so John Knox, one of the magisterial reformers in Scotland, England, and others, and other places, he's got statues celebrating things that he did. But he was also very Scottish. And in fact, he wrote a book against women being queens. Now, he was writing it against Mary Tudor, and it's a big, long title. And another reformer told him, you probably shouldn't publish that. That's not a good idea to publish that. In other words, be a little bit more tactful about, come on, when it hits the publishing stand, Tudor's off, Elizabeth is in. And it's like, yeah, this isn't going to fly. That's a good queen. And she actually shows that your book is probably not good.
Uh-huh.
Right. So this is the same Knox. He is, for a while, he was a bodyguard, and bodyguard to clergy, bodyguard to other people. And this is before he himself is a minister. And he gets arrested. He gets captured by I believe it's Spain. And so he's forced to be in the galley of a ship. And, they'd walk by with, portraits of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and they have to, genuflect and venerate Mary. And one time as they go by, he grabs it and he says, if she's so holy, let's see if she can swim. And she throws the portrait out into the water. And it's not, so this is his temperament, right? Well, now that he's a minister, you would think that he would calm down a little bit. And he doesn't. There's a massacre that takes place in France. And the Queen in Scotland and the monarch in France are mother and daughter. So pretty much. And they're related.
Mm-hmm.
And she's trying to, I think they're mother and daughter. Of course, I'd have to look this up just to fact check it. But what happens in France is a severe massacre.
Mm.
And it just so happens the ambassador from France shows up to Knox's church that Sunday. And he stands up and with the authority of God, looks at that man and says, you, sir, are a murderer. You have no business being in the house of the Lord. You need to leave. And the guy, kind of shrugs it off. And no, he had to leave.
Mm.
Now, go to today. So that's one example of kind of a totalitarian, I think, in a sense. That guy needed to hear the gospel. He needed to hear the gospel like anybody else in that room needed to hear the gospel. And so I'm not saying Knox did the right thing, but I don't know how I would have handled it then either. Mm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, go to today. We have totalitarianism on the other extreme now with the state. The moment the state said you can no longer gather for worship because of a virus, the line was crossed.
Yeah.
There was a line crossed. Freedom no longer rang.
Mm-hmm.
And so ministers had to say, am I willing to go to prison for church? My answer was absolutely.
Yeah.
But like Paul in Ephesus, my elders pulled me back and they said, but we need you here ministering.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you better not count. See, I'm not voting for any decisions now, because from this moment on, I'm telling you, we need to be having church. I'm reading a book right now that's got to deal with this kind of cultural awareness of life under the sun and the apparent totalitarian view that the government has, where it can be our parents, it can be our physicians, it can tell us what we can and cannot do. And I think the church needs to have that mindset of saying, are we getting ready to step into a time of persecution?
Mm-hmm.
Now, our generation, we have felt that since our earliest memories. Columbine, do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? Yes, I do. And then she's shot for it. Let's not forget that. That's called martyrdom, and it happened here in America. The end of persecution is to die. And then let's not forget about all the different churches that have been shot up.
Yep.
You know, we can have people want to cry out, get rid of the police until they need them. We saw that at the Capitol Hill. Guess who protected all the politicians there in Washington? Police officers. National Guard. I ain't got no time for that. And to me, that's what Ecclesiastes does, is it shows the inconsistency of both the sluggard and the workaholic, the hedonist and the ascetic, ascetic, the pleasure seeker and the one that's going to fast all the time. It shows the folly with both. And at the end of the day, it says, look, what matters is whether you've given glory to God. It reminds me of the Apostle Paul looking out at the Corinthians. And he says, in essence, he says, it doesn't matter if this food was sacrificed to idols. It's meat. Give glory to God and eat it. But if the person brings up the fact that he bought it at this place and it had been sacrificed to idols, then you probably should refrain, because they can't view it as just meat. And that's what he means by being all to all people. So you've got a guy. Says, here's we're going to have rump roast for dinner. And if the person says, where did you get it? It doesn't matter where I got it. Eat it and enjoy it. Well, if it was sacrificed to Artemis, I don't know if I can eat this.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the weaker brother.
Huh.
And then for that weaker brother, you don't eat that rump roast. You put it in the fridge and you wait till the next day when they're not around. Don't waste food now.
No, don't waste food.
Don't waste it.
Hey, all right. So let's take a moment and stop there. I think it's really good stuff. We're not done with Ecclesiastes.
Oh,
because our dad.
We were getting ready to get into the fly in the ointment.
Hey, I wasn't there yet. I'm trying to lead into that. Dad put it out there.
Don't let me steal your thunder.
I don't think that's one of them. Anyway, Dad was wanting us to look at Under the Sun, so we've taken a couple of episodes to look at Under the Sun. It's been good stuff. But in Ecclesiastes, not only do we have the phrase under the sun, there's a lot of wisdom that's found in Ecclesiastes and a lot of what Solomon wrote. Also in chapter 10, there is read it for you because I want to look at this next time. In Ecclesiastes chapter 10, this is where we get this phrase. So it says in verse 1, dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench. And that's where we'll
finish.
I will. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate your support. If you would like to give in financial support to J.P. Mosley's ministries at Heidelberg Theological Seminary in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, you may do so at heidelbergseminary.org/support-HTS. That is heidelbergseminary.org/support-HTS. And if you would like to give to the ministries of Tip Mosley at Fellowship Baptist Church in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, you may do so at thefellowshipbc.org/give. That is thefellowshipbc.org/give. Thank you, and may God bless.